Anthony, thanks so much for joining us today to chat about the state of policy and regulation in the commercial and industrial space now in 2024. You just had an article come out in Solar Builder. I'm really excited to learn more. I know for a lot of people, tax policy and regulation might not be that exciting, but in this environment today with the IRA and the bipartisan infrastructure law, there's a lot going on that really does impact our day-to-day solar projects. So this is an important conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. You can kind of view our discussion today as, like a highway. So the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, FERC, is the road. It's our infrastructure that we drive on with the transmission lines that they're building out. The funding programs, the dollars going out the door, it's like your vehicle. And then the tax policies are driving the car, right? You have to have all of these pieces together to have a successful, safe highway, a successful, safe market for solar policies.
I really like that analogy. It kind of brings it to life. So you're relatively new to us. You've come on with SMA in the last year or so as we've expanded our government relations efforts in this ecosystem of many new bills to stimulate the industry. We're really excited to have you on board. You've got such great experience. Why don't you tell everyone a little bit about who you are and your background?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. My name is Anthony Laurita. I'm the government affairs manager with SMA America. I'm from West Virginia with a family that's been working in coal and natural gas for about 60 years. But I've been working in renewables for my professional career, so about 7 years running.
I think that's really interesting. It gives you a unique perspective that many of us don't have, coming from the background of a family and your lived experience in West Virginia being in more of the fossil fuel end and then coming over to the renewable energy. So I really look forward to hearing more of your perspective. And I think we should dive into commercial and industrial. Why don't you start by giving me a little overview of the current state of what's happening in the market right now for solar policy, specifically in C&I?
Yeah, absolutely. The CNI solar sector has seen real significant growth. So it's been driven by regulatory support, financial incentives, and innovations in the market. So the commercial solar segments installed about 434 megawatts in Q1 of 2024, really similar to last year at the same time. We're seeing diversified, newer and smaller markets grow, and that's in help with FERC, with DOE agencies, the administration. And Wood Mackenzie and SIA did a report recently, and they're expecting an average growth of about 11% over the next 5 years.
Wow. So that's a really healthy growth we've seen. But there are some potential changes on the horizon. We may have a new administration come January. So if we're thinking beyond the White House, what role does the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission play in advancing C&I solar projects?
Yeah, well, FERC is really crucial in ensuring a reliable power grid. It's essential for energy projects in general, and especially renewable energy projects in the next decade. So, in coordination with the White House, they're looking to upgrade about 100,000 miles of transmission lines and streamline the permitting process for new energy projects. They're coordinating with the Department of Energy, which recently announced new permitting mandates and funding mechanisms to boost new projects, meet that growing energy demand, and help, push towards a clean energy future.
Yeah, so tax policies are really critical.
Mhm.
We've seen tax policies being major drivers in the C&I space for solar. Can you give us a little bit more specific information on what key tax incentives are available right now? We've been talking about the Inflation Reduction Act a lot, but what do you see as the most important ones right now?
Yeah, great question. So tax credits are so pivotal. It's that driving of the car that I mentioned. The Section 48 investment tax credits, or the ITC, offers a 30% tax credit for eligible project costs. Section 45 production tax credit, or the PTC, provides a per kilowatt hour tax credit for qualified energy projects. And these incentives are boosted by the Inflation Reduction Act, which has seen, it's really the catalyst for the solar industry right now. Then there's also an additive bonus, which everyone's been talking about right now. It's called domestic content percentages, and that is a tax credit of 10% on top of your chosen tax credit. And that's if your project has been developed with a certain percentage of domestic content. So For those looking to work with SMA, we qualify for a percentage of this domestic content, and together you can really get that 10% additive bonus.
Okay, so those are the big ones. And we've heard people talk a lot about 48C, 45X, domestic content. Are there any other financial supports available in C&I in that space that are maybe not on everyone else's radar?
Yeah, there are. I mean, there's different agencies providing billions of dollars of funding. For one example is the Department of Energy's pushing out billions in grants, rebates, loan guarantees. The Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund is one. It's a multi-billion-dollar project, and it finances projects that reduce greenhouse gas emissions and pollution. One mechanism within the GGRF supports C&I solar developments by giving money out to each state, which then funnels down to the local communities. Some projects can receive direct loan guarantees that are long-term, low-interest loans, while others are grants. It's a mechanism that doesn't need congressional approval, and it aims to stimulate that private capital to be more than just a $27 billion program, but to raise capital, get folks involved from the Wall Street of New York, et cetera.
Yeah, that's really interesting to understand. So we've kind of talked about tax incentives. We've talked about how to stimulate local, private capital. These are good to understand. Is there anything beyond that, maybe tariffs or trade policies that also would impact the solar industry for C&I projects?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Biden administration strongly supports domestic manufacturing and securing a strong solar supply chain. This is shown through their tariffs on China and parts of Southeast Asia, and the funding for manufacturing that they have put in the Inflation Reduction Act and the bipartisan infrastructure law, the domestic content bonus credits that I mentioned. And SMA is closely engaged with this on the Hill. We're closely following trade policies because we invest in and participate in a secure and reliable global solar supply chain.
So that's really good context for what has happened, what's happening currently. If we're looking in the future in our crystal ball, kind of looking at the horizon, what do you see as some of the major challenges and some of the opportunities? But let's start with the challenges for the C&I space.
Great question. Looking into the future, I think the main challenges are regulatory complexities and the need for continued financial incentives. Whether the outcome of the election is Democrat or Republican, it's such a big focus to push clean energy and have a strong solar market in the US. And the IRA and BIL are really the largest clean energy investments that we've ever seen. But there's still gaps in funding, and there's still gaps in other areas of the market that need to be addressed. The opportunities are immense in this field, and with the potential cost reductions, technology advancements, and a stronger push towards a sustainable energy future, we need to continue working with global partners, find common ground in a competitive and growing market to see the growth that we're hoping we can in this next decade.
Absolutely. So we need to exercise a lot of nuance and keep our eyes on funding, on incentives, on what's happening with policy and regulation, and digest all of that. So Anthony, thank you so much for these valuable insights. Do you have any final thoughts today?
I do. Thank you for asking. I think it's important to remind ourselves that this is the generational funding that we have been working decades for climate change, for clean energy advancements, and this is an exciting time for C&I solar industry. I think it's important to take a step back, realize how far we've come, but also recognize that there's so much more we can do. I mean, this truly is the solar century.
The solar century. I think that's a good place to wrap up today. Thank you, Anthony, for joining us. Everyone check out Anthony's new article in Solar Builder.
Thank you so much for having me.